Thanks, Adam.
The president says he is open to some type of summer gas tax moratorium. This is a measure two candidates for the White House also support.
Would such a move further stimulate the economy? Let's ask our Fox panel, including Gary Kaltbaum from GaryK.com, Victoria Barrett from Forbes, and Peter Schiff, author of Crash Proof. Peter, we're going to ask you about gold in a second. It is way down. Liz suggested you'd say it's a buying opportunity.
All right, sure.
Okay. Let's talk about this moratorium idea. Gimmick or something of substance?
It's a gimmick. I mean, first of all, remember, it's not gasoline prices that are rising. It's that our money is losing value. Why is our money losing value? Because of what Congress is doing, because of what the Federal Reserve is doing. Instead of focusing on the symptoms of their irresponsible government spending and money printing, why don't they focus on the cause of it and have a sane monetary policy, raise interest rates, stop printing money, and let the government cut back on spending? If they're really concerned about high gas prices, that's what they need to do. Because if they keep doing what they're doing, prices are going much higher.
Well, let's get back to this tax moratorium, Gary K. And, Samuel Bodman, the Energy Secretary, was on our program just a couple of days ago saying, I'm not running for any office. This is a stupid idea to give this moratorium because bridges need to be built. We have an infrastructure that needs those tax revenues, and therefore it's just a plain, outright dumb idea. What do you think?
I'm still waiting for the box of Hostess Twinkies from the government. It seems like they just want to give out money for everything to anybody, and you just can't. And I have to say something. This money for the gas goes towards building bridges. So if you're taking from one place, where you getting it from the other place? It's basically insane as far as I'm concerned. It sounds like a nice idea, but we're back to the election year, and let's give this, let's give that so we can get some votes.
Yeah,
That's
but
all
Victoria,
it is,
we saw how well that money worked in rebuilding bridges or maintaining the upkeep in Minneapolis. I mean, the fact is that sometimes this money doesn't go where it's supposed to go. Sometimes it's used by local politicians to get votes by going for other things. So if we give the drivers a little relief, what's wrong with that?
Well, but one estimate I saw was that only 2/3 of that money actually goes to roads and bridges, period. There's a lot of it that goes into the other category. Look, this at the end of the day wouldn't make a huge difference to consumers. We're talking about, roughly $2 in savings every time you fill your tank, assuming that gas prices remain where they are. So it's not a big deal. I'm in favor of getting rid of it, though, because it's kind of one of these stealth taxes that you pay and you don't realize you're paying it, and I think that's
like payroll taxes that come out of your salary.
Yeah, where you don't really have a sense that you're paying them, and so you don't have an expectation of, well, gee, what am I getting for that? And that's where we get into this kind of black box of Washington, where we pour money into Washington and we don't quite see what we're getting out. So I'm in favor for that reason, but at the end of the day, it's really about politics, not policy. It's political move.
Yeah. Our government is years behind the curve again. And President Bush saying we should be drilling, he had both houses of Congress years ago and absolutely nothing got done. They could have been tougher a few years ago, and we'd be maybe a little bit better off right now. But this is a problem that's sticking around.
One of the worst parts of it, too, is some people, I think Hillary Clinton among them, are talking about actually having a windfall profit tax on the oil companies to offset the loss of revenue. Now, if your goal is to ease, the problems in the oil industry and for the price of oil, the worst thing that you can do, the last thing you'd want to do, is to raise taxes on the people or the companies who are actually producing the oil.
Well, yeah, that doesn't ever work, I think. The windfall tax concept just doesn't simply work, because just as soon as some companies do well, they then do poorly a couple of quarters or a couple of years later.
It's one of the reasons that I try to invest in companies abroad, because, I own a lot of oil stocks around the world, and I never hear in Australia, I never hear in Singapore about windfall profit taxes on my oil companies over there. I hear about them here.
Gang, we are bearing the lead here, which is that oil is down significantly today. Now, Gary K., of course, we have Phil Flynn in from Alron, who knows this thing very well. He said it didn't go below 115, and that's sort of a magic number. A lot of contracts are based on that 115. But what happens if the market just takes care of this problem by itself?
Look, I sure hope so. Look, the one thing I've seen over the last few days, it feels like a lot of the speculation is starting to come out of all the commodities areas, and I'm hopeful we can get some relief. But I got to tell you, nothing good happens unless the oil prices come down. We're losing airlines by the day right now as far as bankruptcy, and it's just a killer for business and the consumer. I'm hoping something happens here. I'd love to see it under 100.
Yeah, but commodity prices, though, it's not a function of speculation. It's not the speculators that are driving these markets. It's not. It's money printing.
It's part speculation, though.
No, it's
hardly speculators.
No, the speculators admit that it's part speculation.
So what? Where were they?
We had both Phil and Eric Bolling saying at least part of it is speculation.
Well, they're wrong. I mean, there are speculators involved, but if you look at the oil market,
you're 100% right. Everybody else is wrong.
If you look at the oil market, right,
no, listen,
oil is not being stockpiled.
But it's true what Peter's saying in that the past 2 days when we saw the dollar weaken, we saw oil go higher, and then today when we see the dollar strengthen, we start to see oil come back. So obviously it's got a lever involved.
But the two are related.
Say it's both, Peter.
No, it's.
I mean, you can't say it's not both.
No. Oil prices are a function of the supply of money in the world. We're printing dollars. The rest of the world is printing their currency to keep the dollar from collapsing.
So hurricanes have nothing to do with it.
No,
but not 100%.
Yeah,
it's not 100% of it.
Well, then it's 99%.
Victoria, go ahead.
What's the difference?
Go ahead, Victoria.
Oil is traded in dollars. So if you're in Euroland and your world is in the euro currency, oil looks cheap to you right now. So you're going to invest in oil futures. That's how the two are linked.
Euroland,
but these aren't speculators. The oil's getting used.
It is a function of currency, but it is also speculators seeing the value in oil because of the weak currency.
That's the last word from sensible Victoria out in the West. Thanks a lot, gang.
Moments to go until the closing bell. 6 minutes, in fact, and stocks are moving slightly lower here, down about 43 points as we've seen a little bit of an acceleration to the downside, David.
Yeah, we have. Although the NASDAQ has been trying, bless its little heart, it's still in the positive territory. It's just up 1.72. But, of course, a lot of things are on hold because of the Fed. Tomorrow we get the word of what they're going to cut, if they cut anything at all. Time for our last licks from our Fox panel, beginning with Sandra Smith at the NYSE. So, Sandra, kind of a holding pattern today.
Yeah, listen, Dave, if you look at the big board right now, we are just now touching over 1 billion shares traded on this day. Very similar to yesterday's trading, very similar to the sideways pattern that we've seen. This is all leading up to that Fed meeting. The Fed meeting already starting today, but the Fed announcement coming tomorrow. So light volume, we're seeing negative breadth in the market. And as you said, seeing the selling pick up here at the end of the day. Not a good sign of what we're going to see when we come in tomorrow. But again, just continued concerns down here about the consumer. Everybody just watching for any signs of a turnaround there. We didn't get it today with closing numbers. So just not a whole lot of good news today. All the buyers down here looking for some sort of catalyst, which could come in the form of the Fed announcement tomorrow. But otherwise, not a lot of conviction either way in trading today.
You know, one of the things we haven't talked about in the past hour or two, Peter, is the consumer confidence number came out, and it was the lowest number since March of 2003. People don't have a lot of confidence right now. And do you need that before you'll see a real rally in the stock market that matters and is significant?
I don't think there's anything for them to be confident about. I think if they knew how bad things really were, the numbers would even be worse. You know, a lot of people think that the Fed's going to meet tomorrow and they're going to announce that the rate cuts are over. And maybe they will. And that's why the dollar has strengthened. You've seen some money move out of gold because they think, aha, this is going to put a floor under the dollar. This is going to stop the inflation. But the bottom line is the rates are still much too low. A monetary policy is much too easy. The dollar is not going to get a bounce from this. The dollar is going to get crushed. And I think people who are betting on a dollar rally because the Fed is not going to cut anymore, I think they're going to move the other way.
Well, Victoria, I'll tell you one person who's betting on a dollar rally. That is Michael Milken. We've been covering the Milken Conference for this past week. Had a lot of great CEOs, billionaires speaking out. Michael Milken thinks that the worst is over. He was telling the New York Times today, when you read the newspapers, it sounds like Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. I would stress that these times are good times, not bad times. He knows a lot about trading currency, and he thinks the dollar is strengthening.
Yeah, he does know a lot about trading currency, but I don't see. It all comes down to the Fed. It all comes down to we still have an easy money policy. And housing, I'm more concerned about what Eli Broad said at the same conference, which was that housing prices still have another 20% to fall. That's really
true.
bad
He said
news
that
for
on Fox
consumers
Business,
and
too,
for the financial sector. I mean, that to me is frightening, coming from someone who knows the housing market very, very well. That's why months ago I thought, hey, second half of this year we're going to see a recovery, and I increasingly don't see that recovery in the second half of the year. I think this is longer.
Gary Kay, do you have the same dark cloud over your head that Peter does that says there's nothing to be confident about?
Well, I think he's wrong. Look, this economy has withstood a lot over the years, and it's still in a rough shape. And I did my little research in retail this weekend, and I spoke to a lot of managers and a lot of salespeople. Not very good. But look, I'm hopeful. Interest rates are way down. Hopefully things get better. Commodity stocks are being crushed today, and I'm hopeful that's because commodity prices are going to start coming down. If that happens, that could be good for the economy. But overall, I think we're going to muddle through at best. I just think the consumers got problems here for the next couple of quarters.
And Peter, as Gary was talking, we saw gold go down $25. It's now trading about $870 for an ounce. It's come down significantly today because they believe that the Fed is going to tighten for once, or at least they don't stop their
right, and they might be right. They might stop the rate cuts, but you have to look at the absolute level of rates, and you got to look at what the Fed is doing with money supply and look at the overall economy. The dollar's got no place to go but down. He points out that our economy has withstood problems in the past. The problem is we really didn't withstand them. We postponed them by borrowing more money. That's the whole resiliency of our economy, that we could always borrow more money and go deeper into debt. But we can't do that anymore because the creditors won't lend us the money.
What countries' investments interest you the most these days?
Oh, I love Asia. I mean, we're putting a lot of money into Hong Kong and Singapore, investing a lot in Europe, actually, in Australia, in New Zealand, Scandinavia. You know, I think we're on the verge of a major boom in the global economies. I think once the world can cut the shackles of the American economy that's been dragging the global economy down, you know, we're responsible for all this inflation around the world. We're exporting inflation. We're using up the world's capital. We're using up their production.
Victoria, to Peter's point, it's true that a lot of the earnings that we've heard over the past couple of weeks have specifically been from companies, the positive earnings, who are getting a lot of euros, making a lot of money in Asia.
Exactly.
Those are the companies whose earnings are doing well.
Exactly. I mean, that's one thing that we have going for us, is that our economy is very diverse, and we have the big multinational companies based here that are doing 50% or more of their revenues abroad. And in that case, a weak dollar helps them. Their goods look all the more attractive to someone who's paying in a stronger currency.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not diverse enough.
That's the bright side.
All right. Well, there we go. The closing bell as the trading is slowly grinding to a halt. We see the Dow Jones losing 36 points. Couldn't eke out that gain, although the NASDAQ, David...
Still ahead. Still ahead by a tick.
And it looks like a pretty decent month for the NASDAQ so far.
It is, but as the business trading day has come to a close, the business day continues, and here's the financial news.